Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live, presented by BetMGM. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and this is the Week 13 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, are my BBOC fellow co-hosts, Collin Wilson and the one and only Mr. Brett McMurphy. We have a lot to get to today. We'll give our three best bets, as always. We'll talk two marquee matchups, starting with the game between Ohio State and Michigan coming up shortly. Big noon kickoff. And we'll also talk a little Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. Also bring in our fellow co-host, Mike Calabrese, for his group of five bet of the day. And talk with the universally loved, admired, and respected Darren Ravel for a quick market report. And most importantly, his fade Ravel. Fingers crossed. Before we get started here, I do want to remind everyone to make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there, in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. And as I mentioned previously, BBOC is sponsored by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colin, before we get started here, a very nice day out of you yesterday. Even faded your Razorback stop. Sam Pittman, does he still have that vote of confidence?
I don't know what the confidence is in. It can't be coaching football because yesterday was a monstrosity. Drink even threw a couple jabs in after the game, but hey, you know, it never changes. Like I said, I've lived through the plague with this team, so we'll be back next year.
Brett, your team, little rosier outlook. I believe we don't have to go through the Big 12 nightmare tiebreaker scenarios because Texas won. Win, and you're in the Big 12 title, right?
Yeah, win and we're in. Who would have thunk it after starting the year 2-2? And I really, actually, honestly thought Oklahoma State would go 2-10. So much better outlook, and then they can destroy the Big 12's playoff hopes with an upset against the Longhorns.
Yeah, death taxes and Gundy getting to the postseason, and remarkable turnaround for the Pokes, who, as long as they take care of business against BYU, is close to a 17-point favorite. They will face Texas next week. Pretty anticlimactic Saturday for the final Saturday. It's like Michigan, Ohio State. Winner goes the Big Ten title. We have to figure out the other Sun Belt spot. But other than that, it looks like everything else is pretty much locked in, assuming your Pokes take care of business. But enough of that, and let's get right into our best bets. Let's first take a peek at the leaderboard. I need a 2-1 week for back-to-back 60% regular seasons. After yesterday, I don't know if I'll even get a win, but we'll see. I'll kick things off with my first best bet, and I'm going to go with San Diego State. We're going to go to prime time. Brady Hoke's last game against Fresno State. I think they'll show up here fully motivated. Fresno State might be just, a lame duck here. They were in the Mountain West race up until a few weeks ago. They even controlled their own destiny. Get upset as huge favorites against New Mexico, already bowl eligible, not really playing for anything. San Diego State also has revenge from a meltdown last year against Fresno that pretty much eliminated them from the division race. And just from a matchup perspective, couple things here. Fresno State lost their best offensive lineman and left tackle a few games ago, and then his backup offensive line is a mess. But they don't really run it, and when they do, they don't really do it successfully. And that means they won't take advantage of San Diego State's biggest weakness, which is their run defense, which has been abhorrent all year. And if you look at San Diego State this season, really disappointing year, but they've been trounced by any team that can run it really well. You're talking UCLA, Oregon State, Air Force when they were healthy. But teams that don't really run it or don't really run it well, they've been right there, just on the short end of the stick. So I think San Diego State actually wins this game outright. So give me the Aztecs in the Brady Hoke farewell party. Colin, where you headed?
Well, it's going to be a dirty card for me. I'm going to start it off with Pitt +5 going up against Duke. This is a team that's on 9 days rest coming into this game, and they finally have stability at quarterback with Nate Yarnell beating Boston College 9 days ago. He was never sacked. had a rushing touchdown. He had a 12.8 average depth of target, so he can throw downfield, he can scramble, he can run. He's everything that Pitt's been looking at for a quarterback that all this season. Not sure why Narduzzi waited till the end of the year to use him, but Duke is heading completely in the opposite direction. They've lost 4 of their last 5, including a loss to Virginia last week. You have to wonder if Mike Elko's foot is one of them's already out the door to Texas A&M or what's going on. We know that Riley Leonard going down at quarterback has been pretty bad for this offense, and Grayson Loftus has only completed 54% of his passes this year. That's made Duke more of a running team, and that plays right into Pitt's defense, which has been top 35 against the run and top 35 defensively in finishing drives. So give me Pitt +5.
Amazingly, if Pitt wins this game, Duke, after being in the discussion for the ACC championship midway through the season, they would go under their season win total. Brett, we've started with San Diego State and Pitt. Surely you can't get uglier than that.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit more mainstream here. How about LSU? I won on last week's show, taking LSU over the team total. Today, I'm sticking with the Tigers, but this time laying the points. I don't know if you've heard or not, but Jaden Daniels is now the favorite to win the Heisman, and he actually should win it since it goes to the nation's most outstanding player, not the best player on the team playing in a conference title. Anyway, LSU will keep its foot on the pedal. They will keep Daniels in until the final second for him to make one last final Heisman push. The most amazing stat about Daniel, he should be called the human first down. Yes, the human first down, because every time he takes a snap from center, LSU averages over 10 yards per play. For A&M, their mind's going to be elsewhere. They're still trying to find a replacement for Jimbo Fisher. Wide receiver Evan Stewart did not travel with the team, and I'm sure a number of players are already planning their next portal destination. Add in A&M's road struggles where they've been winless this year, and the Tigers, even with their leaky defense, cover the 13 points.
Yeah, Daniel's begging for snaps in the final minutes against Georgia State, so I assume he's not coming out of this game, which eliminates, a path to, one of the, you take a 13-point underdog. How many times would they cover because, the other team's up 14 or 17, they bring in their backup, you get a backdoor. I don't think that's happening with LSU here. They want to get as many stats as possible for Jaden Daniels, who, of course, won't play next week, while the other quarterbacks in the conversation will. Speaking of someone else in the Heisman conversation, Marvin Harrison Jr., he still has an outside shot. He's going to have a ridiculous day to really get in that conversation. And if he does and Ohio State wins, then he will be playing again next week. So let's talk the game coming up here in just a little over an hour between Michigan and Ohio State. Obviously, the stakes are enormous. Winner wins the division, goes to the Big Ten championship, presumably wins that, and goes to the College Football Playoff. The loser is on the outside looking in all likelihood. Looking like Michigan, consensus 346. The total's been floating around 46. The side's been floating around 3.5. I'll kick things off here. I like the first half under. I think both the offensive lines have issues, and both defensive lines are going to dominate up front. And when you have a big game like this with so much on the line, a lot of times what you see is both teams want to come out and not make a mistake. And I think that's what you're going to see here. You're going to see very conservative game plans. You're going to see, if it's 4th and 1 at the 45, at the 50, then I think they're going to punt and they're going to rely on their defenses. Hey, let's not make a mistake. I think eventually the game will open up, and then you could see some mistakes, some turnovers. But I think at least early on, hey, let's feel this out. Let's rely on our defenses. Not going to take too many shots. And I think both defenses will have the advantage early on. Mix that with conservative play calling, at least in the first quarter. And I think this sets up for a first half under. Game could potentially open up. And Collin, you're banking on that because you like the full game over.
Yeah, I do think the game is going to open up at some point. I do see this starting slow, but at some point they're going to bust out and have explosives, similar to the game had last year. Michigan, Sharon Moore had Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, had his number. Every defense that he called, Michigan had an answer on offense. Now, how much of that was sign stealing or how much was that more doing his homework on what Ohio State's going to show on defense. I don't believe completely that JJ McCarthy is as bad as what we've seen through the past 6 quarters of play. He didn't even throw a pass in the second half against Penn State. Blake Corum has been running wild. That should do a little bit of moving the chains and getting into scoring position for Michigan. And then on the other side of the ball, Ohio State, I think, is going to have a huge advantage with Marvin Harrison Jr., mostly because he runs crossers and hitch routes. If you go into Michigan's secondary and look what they're efficient against, it's not hitch routes. They have been blown up this season by that. I think Harrison's going to have a big day. I think both teams are going to score points in the second half when we get over.
I'm curious to see just the sideline shenanigans and what goes on there. That should be must-see TV. It's a shame Harbaugh won't be there. Brett, what are you saying here?
Yeah, I got to go against Collin. I agree with a lot of what you said, Stuckey. I like the full game under, though. Neither defense has allowed more than 4 touchdowns in a game this year. Ohio State has not allowed a single touchdown longer than 20 yards. And Stuck, what you said about teams being conservative, I think that plays into it. Michigan's got an interim coach. He just wants to not lose. He's not worried about getting a spread. And for Ryan Day, I mean, this is a huge, huge game for him. He just wants to get out of there with a win. Obviously, if he can run it up, he will. Ryan Day, 1-2 against Michigan, 40-0 against everybody else. I think you combine all that, the shenanigans, some murmurs that McCarthy may not be 100%. I think this lends to a hard-fought, cliche, lower scoring game, under 46.
Yeah, that's certainly something to watch. Is McCarthy? He had some misfires against Maryland. We'll see what his arm and accuracy looks like. Good stuff there. Can't wait for that game. The highest stakes on the board by a mile. All right, let's move on to our second best bet. I'll get things started here. I'm going to go with Ball State. This number has come down a bit, but I still like it against Miami of Ohio. Ball State, it's a team since I wrote the midseason MAC manifesto. I said this is a buy-on team. They've covered every game since 4 straight, still playing hard. They're down to their 3rd quarterback, and I think it was a prudent change. It's not a complex offense. It's a run-heavy offense. It's not explosive. It's a read option, 1 read, but that's what they do. They don't have a ton of good receivers on the outside. They dealt with a ton of injuries early on in the season, as expected when you open up with Kentucky and Georgia. They're really finding their stride, and they're playing hard still. Miami of Ohio already locked in to the MAC title next week. They could sit guys. They don't really care. And even if they do, this offense is they play in a phone booth. There's no explosiveness. This should be a really low-scoring game. I think the total's now at 35 points at a premium. Give me Ball State, still playing really hard for Mike New. Collin, where are you going?
I'm going to get another dirty pick in. Let's take Florida Atlantic +4 going up against Rice. Tom Herman as a dog has really kind of failed us against the spread this year, but can he show up against 5-win Rice and keep them from going to a bowl? We're going to say that he can. There's just been no update from Mike Bloomgren this week on whether JT Daniels is going to play. He suffered a head injury 2 games ago. He did not practice this week. Rice has lost their previous 3 games. AJ Pageant has been in relief against SMU. They lost to UTSA. Rice is improving and leaning on ground explosives without JT Daniels there. The problem is the Owls, the Florida Atlantic Owls in this case, are top 20 in allowing rush explosives. And then when you look at Daniel Richardson, the quarterback for Florida Atlantic, his big problem is when he has a whole bunch of pressure, his completion rate drops 30%. A lot of havoc gets him, making bad decisions. Rice has recorded just 3 sacks in the last 3 games. This Rice team is going in the opposite direction. I think Florida Atlantic shows up here.
Well, Collin, you and I have started with San Diego State, Pitt, Ball State, and Florida Atlantic. What could possibly go wrong? Brett, you at least gave us a team with a competent quarterback for your first best bet. What do you got now?
Yeah, real quick, I'm giving out my first ever lock of the millennium. The Owls will win and cover outright in Collin's game. So load up on that. Yeah, look, I'm going more SEC centric. Tennessee. The last 2 weeks, Tennessee's vaunted offense scored a total of 17 points. I mean, who do they think they are? Iowa? So how in the world are they going to cover 4 touchdowns against Vanderbilt? Easily, very easily. They get the Commodores. The Commodores are an incredibly bad 1-10 against the spread and 2-9 straight up. Tennessee has a knack of crushing bad opponents under Josh Heupel. This year, they beat Virginia by 36. They beat UConn by 56. Tennessee takes its frustration of consecutive losses out on poor Vandy and crushes the Commodores and easily covers the 4 touchdowns.
Poor Vandy. Yeah, if they finish with if they get blown out here and your best bet hits, then they will finish 1-11 against the spread. But they can hang a banner. They're 1 cover game against Georgia. All right, let's take a break in the action and bring in the universally loved and admired Mr. Darren Ravel for a quick market report, and most importantly, his fade Ravel. Darren, what's going on, brother?
Stuck, speaking of admiring, do you like my triangle of Northwestern helmets? Go Cats, bowl eligible. Okay, no surprises. Most bet game is Ohio State, Michigan, then Auburn, Alabama, then Kentucky, Louisville. Most bet teams, Ohio State, plus 3.5, Alabama, minus 13.5, and Louisville, minus 7.5. Most bet overs, Ohio State, Michigan at 46.5. Let me tell you something about Ohio State. They're 9-2 to the under this year. That is the most under of a team they've ever been since 2009 when they were 3-1. So that's an interesting note for me. Texas A&M, LSU. Of course, I think LSU will put up crazy numbers there, 66.5, and Alabama-Auburn 48. Most bet unders, Liberty, UTEP 55.5, Notre Dame, Stanford 50.5, and Florida State, Florida 49.5. Most bet underdogs outright, Ohio State plus 140, Auburn plus 450. Totally don't think there's any chance there. And Florida plus 200, which brings me to my fade Ravel. Florida is not winning this game, and they're also not covering. You don't have Graham Mertz. I think that's the first time I've ever said that because he's just not too good. And, obviously you don't have Travis, but I think Florida State is a better team. I think their defense is much better. And I don't think everyone wants the narrative that Florida is going to, let's get this bowl, let's get going. I don't think that narrative is going to happen. I like Florida State minus 6.5.
Ravel's been semi
good
warm on his fade Ravels over the past few weeks. So you know what time it is. It's time to back Sunbelt Billy as an underdog and the Florida Gators. But
are you though? Or are you just saying that for the joke? Because you didn't look too upset, so I think you're just doing this just for this story.
I would not lay. I would not want to have Tate Rodemaker winning by a touchdown plus in this game. I actually think Max Brown, their backup, he actually fits Billy Napier's system better. Like he can run the read options.
He went 5 for 6 last week. I mean, come on.
It's not even about throwing it. He can run the ball. So like Billy Napier's offense is predicated. He always has a mobile quarterback. And Mertz is just like semi-mobile, but Max Brown could actually run the ball. This Florida State team's been terribly inconsistent. It's just a game with a ton of variance. I'll probably have Florida in like a round robin. It's hard to predict. Like you have 2 backup quarterbacks going up against each other. Colin, do you want to add in anything here?
I don't want Tate Rodemaker in the playoff. So I don't know if Sunbelt Billy can get it done here, but I mean, Florida State has got to take a loss in the next 2 weeks as a guy who's sitting around with Oregon and Texas futures. We need a spot to open up. So that's where
you're Billy's biggest fan today. It's Collin Wilson. All right. Thanks, Darren. Good luck on your wager tonight. Thanks for the market report. And we will see you next week. Enjoy bowl season too.
You got it.
All right. Good stuff there. Let's move on to our second marquee matchup of the day. And Darren mentioned this. Let's head down south to the Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. Alabama was laying over 2 touchdowns. This number has come down a bit. I would wait to see. I think Alabama will probably take more money. It's Thanksgiving week. You get a lot of these favorites take money late. A lot of public action comes in. I would prefer if you have 14 plus, but this is the ultimate buy low spot on Auburn. I mean, that they clearly just weren't prepared, overlooking last week against New Mexico State. It was an offense that was kind of coming into its own over the past 3 weeks. Look, ad line was around 10.5, 11. you should get their best effort here. I mean, if you're ever going to get a team's best effort, it's after losing as 24-point favorites at home to a Group of 5 team in a rivalry game against Alabama. Weird things happen here. I mean, we saw a couple of years ago with Alabama's playoff chances on the line as 22-point favorites. Auburn almost pulled that off outright. This is just the ultimate buy low spot on Auburn. Collin, what do you see here?
Yeah, I agree. You got to get the New Mexico State game out of your head. Hugh Freeze spent the week recruiting, spent the week putting in the Alabama game plan. There was nothing about facing Jerry Kill that he wanted any part of, and it showed in that loss, which has given us a little bit of a bump on the Auburn number this week, although it has come down in the last couple of days. I'm going to take the first half on Auburn. I think you're going to get the best version of the Tigers that you've seen the entire season in the first half here. That loss to New Mexico State gave Hugh Freeze every reason to get them motivated if they didn't need it already to face Alabama. But in this very same building, they took on Georgia and had Georgia on the ropes in the first half. So Auburn has definitely been a come out hot team in the first quarter, second quarter when they have challenged in games. I expect that to be a similar case here. So I'm going first half on Auburn with Hugh Freeze, who is one of the best middle eight coaches in the country.
Yeah, I backed Auburn at home against Georgia in similar price range and got the same price against Alabama in a good spot. I mean, next week, what's Georgia going to be? 4.5 point favorite against Alabama in the SEC championship. Brett, what do you see here?
Yeah, I like Auburn also. I think, last week, throw that away. Auburn's going to be carefree. They've got nothing to lose. They've locked up a bowl game. And also, Hugh Freeze has 3 wins against Saban. Real quick, only one coach has beat Saban more times. You know who that is?
Tuberville?
Tuberville, right. 4 wins against Saban. So Freeze knows how to be successful against Saban. Look, I'm not picking it outright, Auburn win. But also, as big as the Iron Bowl is, Alabama also, they know what's ahead, and that's Georgia in the SEC title game. Margin of victory is not going to impact Alabama's chances to get the college football playoff. It's to win the next 2 games. That's it. I think Auburn keeps it close. Like you said, Stuck, a lot of crazy things happen at Auburn in this game. And Alabama has shown that they are human on the road a little bit at USF. So I'll take the 2 touchdowns and the Tigers.
Brett got his USF mention.
There you go. Cash
your tickets. All right, good stuff there. Can't wait for that game. Yeah, Auburn's got to get off to a good start. That's going to be the key to this game. So you got to count on Freeze having a good script, which I think he will. All right, let's take another break in the action and get to our round robin money line parlay. Collin, we've hit like 4 or 5 recently a couple times. Big Ten West has let me down a few times. Purdue once, Illinois once. Kick things off for us this week. Let's get 5 for 5.
Well, in a round robin format, we'll take 4 or 5 every week, but we're going to start off with Jacksonville State, a team that thinks they should be Conference USA champions, not allowed to play in the conference championship game, not allowed to go to bowl season, making this their all-time Super Bowl in their first year as an FBS member, taking on a New Mexico State team that is moving on to the Conference USA championship game. So I don't know if Diego Pavia is going to play. We kind of fell into that trap last week, but Jacksonville State will have everything in the world here. You've seen this team in the market. They're going to win outright against New Mexico State. They're more fired up for this, and they could be any other game on their schedule.
Yeah, good anchor there. Agree. Let's throw in Florida. I already mentioned this earlier during the Fade Ravel segment. What do you want with a moneyline dog? A lot of uncertainty, ideally. There's a ton of uncertainty here with 2 backup quarterbacks going up against each other. So give me the Gators fighting for bowl eligibility and to ruin their rival season. Where are you going next?
Yeah, let's go with Ball State. You mentioned it earlier, but there is no team that has been knocked out of bowl season for multiple consecutive weeks that is still covering and playing hard. That would be Ball State. So let's take them in the MAC.
And I'll go San Diego State. I already mentioned this earlier as one of my best bets. I think they get the job done in Hoke's farewell party. Close us up.
Yeah, we're going to take Cal as our ending one here. Pretty big spread, but we're going to take them on the money line. They have 5 wins. They need another win to get to bowl season. On the flip side, I don't know what UCLA is doing. They have really been deflated over the last couple of weeks, whether that is chip and questions about his job, or maybe he's out doing the recruiting already. But the quarterback position has been a complete disaster, trying to get any stability and trying to get the havoc allowed number in a top 25 ranking has just been a real challenge for the Bruins this year. Let's take the Bears here to get bowl eligible.
All right, we are, Collin, you and I are just really sticking up the joint today. The round robin is Jacksonville State, Florida, Ball State, San Diego State, and Cal. All right, let's take another break in the action, and I'll throw it to our fellow BBOC co-host, Mike Calabrese, for his Group of 5 bet of the day. Mike?
Thanks, Stuck. For my best bet here in G5 land to round out the regular season, I'm going with Colorado State laying 5.5 on the islands against Hawaii. They need one more win to get to bowl eligibility. They've been surging down the stretch against weak teams, and here comes another one in the Rainbows. They are coming off a 42-9 loss on the mainlands against Wyoming, and they've just been boom or bust at home this season. They got quality wins over New Mexico State, a shocking upset by 2 touchdowns over Air Force, but then they go ahead and they give up 41 points to San Diego State. They give up 35 points in a shutout loss to San Jose State. So when things aren't going well for them, the bottom really falls out. And in terms of the game within the game, the Colorado State offense against the Hawaii defense, that's the biggest mismatch in this one, because the Hawaii defense is bottom 20 against the run. And for most of the season, Colorado State could not take advantage of weak run defenses when teams were dropping 7 and 8 into pass coverage to try to slow down Fowler Nicolosi in this passing attack. But out of nowhere, freshman Justin Marshall has 37 carries and 217 yards in the last 2 games, and he's the difference maker here because he takes the ball out of Fowler Nicolosi's hands, can reduce some of those, bad throw opportunities. He only has 2 picks in his last 2 games, and then taking advantage, as I mentioned, of that weak Hawaii run defense. And then when Hawaii is trying to get Fowler Nicolosi into some dicey throws, they're only 107th in interception rate. So I view this as an opportunity for the Rams to double their win total from last season in year 2 of Jay Norvell, get to bowl eligibility. They're surging. Hawaii cannot, qualify for a bowl game. So I think at this point, it's white flag season in game 13 for the Rainbows, and I'll go ahead and play this one all the way up to a touchdown. All right, back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Mike. If you haven't or don't already, well, first make sure you subscribe, BBOC, wherever you listen to podcasts, but make sure you check out the Group of 5 guys, Mike Calabrese and Mike Iannello. They do a great job. Episodes out every Wednesday. They'll have their episode out this upcoming Wednesday to preview the Group of 5 conference championships. Collin and I will be back on Thursday previewing all 10. It's kind of bittersweet. It's the last full college football Saturday slate, but I love just taking, all right, here's 10 games and diving into them. So can't wait to get to that episode. Also, don't forget about the voicemail, 959 Bad Beat. We'll have a recap episode out Monday morning. But we do have one final task, and that's our final 3rd best bet of the show. I'll kick things off. Sorry, Darren, I'm fading your Northwestern Wildcats, so I think they're going to be a little fat and happy. Got their coach locked up. Already have bowl eligibility. Meanwhile, Illinois still fighting for bowl eligibility. They've been extremely unlucky. A couple games go the other way. They could be playing for the division and a spot in the Big Ten championship this weekend. Meanwhile, Northwestern, pretty fortunate season. You got to give David Brown a ton of credit. But, I mean, even last week against Purdue, they turned it over 5 times and on downs in Northwestern territory. They also had their quarterback scratched right before the game. A number of those wins for Northwestern this year. I think Illinois comes out motivated and wins this by at least a touchdown. Give me Burt and the Illini. Collin, we can't. Can you stick it up even more than I have?
No, I mean, if we had like 4 or 5 best bets, I'd be able to get UMass in. But sadly, we're going to have to settle with the UTEP plus 17 here. Going up against Liberty, yes. Boy, am I playing against the Conference USA championship teams that are participating. UTEP plus 17. Liberty is headed to the Conference USA championship game next week, and we have seen Jamie Chadwell in this spot before. He was coaching Coastal last year, took on James Madison the last week of the year, a game that he didn't need to make the championship game in the Sun Belt, and he got a 50-burger put up against him with James Madison. So, we'll see what he can do this year with Liberty in the same situation. UTEP is the 2nd best pass rush in FBS per PFF. Liberty is 83rd in pass blocking, so I expect there to be some pressure on Caden Salter today. And Liberty really is a heavy rush team with Caden Salter, running back Quentin Cooley, but UTEP is 9th in broken tackles allowed. Once they get a hold of you, they do not let go. Stand up, Miner Nation. Picks up. Let's go.
Picks up. Just to recap to anyone who joined the show late, by the way, hit that like and subscribe button. Collin Best bets: Pitt, FAU, and UTEP. I went San Diego State, Ball State, and Illinois. Brett, at least for the people, as LSU and Tennessee. And now you're going to go with an over. You're saving the show, Brett. Who do
With
you
an
got?
over, yeah. Real quick, Colin, UTEP. You know what that stands for, right? I love that pick. You take them points. So go Miners. Yeah, my final pick, I'm going over. Look, UCF and Houston playing in Orlando. UCF needs a win to get bowl eligible. But look, there are more important things at stake today. Will the real space school please stand up? Cape Canaveral, 35 miles east of UCF, and Kennedy Space Center is nearby, while Houston, of course, home of Mission Control. Houston coach Dana Holgerson, as he always does, had a tremendous quote about who's the real space school when he said, "Do you ever hear anyone say, Orlando, we have a problem?" He's right. Houston's defense, though, is the problem. They're allowing more than 30 points in 5 of their last 7 games. UCF's offense has been very effective, especially at home when they put up 45 points against Oklahoma State. Wait, I think they just scored again against the Pokes. The Cougs will not put up much of a fight defensively, but their offense will try to keep pace with UCF and put this game over the total. Godspeed and good luck.
All right. Got some space references in there, and you got your USF. Also got in Arkansas, even if it wasn't in the best of the lights. But thanks, as always, to Collin, Brett, Mike, and Darren for joining me. Thanks to our producers in the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. One final reminder to make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. Also, one final reminder from our sponsor, BetMGM. BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. As I mentioned before, we'll be back. Recap episode out Monday morning, 959 Bad Beat. Call into the voicemail. Scream, cry, yell, do whatever you need to do. And we'll be back midweek, Group of 5 guys Wednesday, Colin and I Thursday. Enjoy the last final college football big slate. And good luck on all of your wagers. We'll see you same time next Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Cheers.